Hello, welcome to another edition of the Low-Code Café. This is episode number 160 for Wednesday, April 24th, 2024. Today we're going to focus on execute workflow action some more, talking about a nice way to streamline your processes. And we'll talk some about separation of concerns and using the execute workflow action. Before that, we'll talk some about hotfixes and the end of our beta release and a bunch of stuff. But first, let me introduce myself. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plant and App, joined capably by Patrick Anderson, Technical Success Manager for Plant and App. And you, thanks for joining. This is an event we do every other Wednesday this hour, and it's we do updates, we do demonstrations, we try to spend the most of our time on hands-on coding, keeping this something of a technical event. But if you have something that you think that would be of interest to the community as a whole, we'd love to host you as our guest speaker. Reach out and we'll do that. We record all these, we put them out on YouTube, so we now have like 160 hours of content, and very proud of continuing to build that. You can get a hold of that. We invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, so youtube.com/plantandapp, and subscribe and set the alarm bell. We usually post these within a day of when we do them. Simple agenda today. I'm going to be talking about a few things from the trenches of support, and then we'll dive right on into these workflows and the topic of the day. But if you have questions along the way, do engage with us. There's the chat window, the question and answer. You can raise your hand and talk if you want. When it's all over with, use our feedback form. That'll be in the emails that we send to you, the link to that. Since we do it every other week, the next live webinar will be 2 weeks from today. That would be May 8. So now just a couple of status announcements. We are preparing to release version 1.26, and that now is set for a hard release date of May 7. We are practically ready to release it, and could have released it tomorrow, but there's Easter holidays happening in Romania, where a lot of our technical resources are, so we want to make sure everyone is available. So that's May 7, so that gives us lots of time to put on the finishing touches, but you can count on 1.26 coming out. So lots of features, and we've covered those in previous ones, so I won't go into them now. From the trenches of support, last hotfixes of version 1.25. 1.25 has been a particularly long release, more than a year, and so we've released 90 hotfixes previously, 7 today, and they're really all about about the same topic. You'll want to look for the app builder release hotfix, and it covers improvements to our configuration page redeployment. As many of you know, we use our product as part of our product, so many of the pages within the configuration page are forms and listings that are low code and actions that are low code. And we've had some issues with redeployment of these pages and the underlying logic between releases, and we've stabilized that. We've improved it, and it's going to be installed here with these last hotfixes. We encourage you to, you'll see 7 of them, and they're all really the same topic, and you can install them all at once. We encourage you to do that. Just a note that when you get to the point where you're going to upgrade to 126, we recommend, and depending on what version of hotfixes you've installed, we enforce that you upgrade, you install all the hotfixes before going on to version 126. The idea behind that is stability, that if everybody is at the same spot, you are traversing the same path that we are, and so everybody's doing this major update from the same place. So not that you have to do anything now, but just realize that when you get to the point that you're installing 126, you really should install all of the hotfixes for 125 first, and you probably will be enforced to do that. So aside from the configuration pages, we've added a new logger to log things that are going on with system updates, and this is part of our larger plan to add reliability to the process of upgrading. And the logger will help us tell what goes wrong. If things do go wrong, the upgrade process as a whole is going to alert you to things that go wrong. A let's put before that, we're improving the reliability, so less will go wrong. But if something goes wrong, it's not only logging it, but it's going to tell you that that's happening. You won't have to search through the logs to find out that something went wrong or something didn't happen. A minor cosmetic things, when you clicked on a menu in the configuration, the menu highlight was lost in one of our previous updates, and this fixes it. And if you think about the updates page, if you're looking at hotfixes, we used to limit that to show 10 or so items, and really you want to be able to see all the hotfixes. So we've now changed all those pages so that everything always shows. You don't have to page to see the other items on those pages. So just a convenience thing, and makes it easier to install all hotfixes all at once. Every Friday we run the Low-Code Campfire and encourage you to participate in that. So that's the same hour, 10 a.m. Central Time, and that's more of a conversation, not a presentation. And you can bring things that you want to talk about, things that stumble you or that you've encountered, and help the group, or hear what others have to say. So we definitely encourage you to be part of that. And then here are the links for this episode, and sure Patrick is all set to put those on the clipboard on the chat, but you can register in advance for Low-Code Campfire. You can subscribe to these webinars at YouTube. You can get it onto our community portal, and that's a great place to engage again with our community. You can ask questions and get answers not only from us, but from our community. And that's that feedback form. You can tell us what you thought about this webinar. This episode, I did things a little differently. Oftentimes we create we run one episode where when it's a larger topic, we maybe break it into multiple episodes. And because this has a lot of foundation, I did the foundation stuff as a separate YouTube video. It was posted yesterday afternoon, but there's the link to it. That's part one. So if you want to follow along step by step on exactly how to build what I'm going to be working on today, you can get access to the step by step setup. For today, I wanted to focus more on the deep dive of how to use execute workflow. And so going through an hour and 5 minutes worth of setup, lots of you have already done that many times. And so you'll be able to follow along with me. I'll show you what I set up, but if you want the information exactly how it was set up, that's that other YouTube video. So our objective, what I hope to come away with today, is that we're going to talk about learning how to break down these complex processes, and the processes we're dealing with today are not all that complex, but thinking about introducing the principle of breaking things down into manageable steps and then running them through execute workflow. And one of the underlying principles is the separation of concerns. Rather than building a big complex workflow with many twists and turns, that if you divide them out into simpler discrete blocks and then process them one at a time, the logic itself is simpler to look at, simpler to maintain. So that's where we're going. So let's take a look at what we're going to accomplish. I'm going to start with a demonstration of what we're going to accomplish, and then take a quick look at what I created yesterday in my setup video, and then we'll go from there. We'll start building. So on my preparation system, I'm on the configuration menu. I just want to show you there's no users in the system, and we are here's our form. The overall purpose of this system is to onboard users. Your system can be anything, but for ours, it's a multiple step process to import users, to onboard them by creating user IDs for them, by setting some of them up as managers, and then sending them an email that details what we did for them. So that's our onboarding scenario. And so I'm going to just kind of actually run through it. I have a spreadsheet, and I'm going to, it's this onboarding list. I'm going to import it, and I have it here. This is an example. This is the spreadsheet we're about to import. So we got first name, last name, email, manager email. So the implication is if you're named as a manager in the manager email, you become a manager. And so Tom Manager is going to be the manager. Notice this is sheet one, so we're importing the sheet into our system. So we say import. After we do that, we have these 4 records are now present. We've got some new fields that are going to be developed as we do our processes, and they all start out in the status of new. What I've built is that we've got, and this is what we're going to build today. We've got a process that has 6 process steps, and when you, so we are processing new users. We see whether they exist. If they don't exist, we create new users. If we look to see if managers have the manager role, and if they don't, we give it to them. Finally, we build a welcome email. There's 2 more steps here that I didn't include yet. I don't know if we'll get to them, but it's actually sending the welcome email and then saying the process is complete. But we'll be able to hit the Run Now button and then watch step by step as these things process. I've also, this one, I've just arbitrarily marked it as is enabled false, so it's not going to run. So anything that lands in that step doesn't succeed. Excuse me, it doesn't run, it doesn't advance from there. And so now we see step by step that all these have run. And if we go back to our the onboarding users and take a look at it, we can see that which ones are new users and whether or not they're a manager. So for example, Tom Manager is a manager. We've built up a welcome email that has all the different parts and pieces, but Tom didn't get an email because he got stuck in this role that was in this step that was turned off, in the status that was turned off. So the going back again, just kind of taking a look, this is going to let us visually see where we are in the process. We can turn things on and off. We can insert more steps into the process, and they'll just be picked up by this automatically. So that's where we're going, and I'm going to set this aside now, and we'll take a look at our base system. So this is the system that I set up in the video yesterday. It doesn't have any of the automation, but it does have, oh, I guess I didn't, I'm sorry, back to proof of what I accomplished here. I wanted to, I forgot to show you that users got created, and they got created with roles and things like that. So that's, yep, that's where we're going. All right. So by way of setup, what I did was I have in entities, I have 2 things: the onboarding status, a set of statuses that show all the different status that onboarding statuses. They start out as new, they're going to wind their way through complete, and they take these different statuses along the way, depending on whether their user exists. If it exists, it drops down to, do they have managers? If it doesn't exist, it processes this. So we have a bunch of statuses that represents where they are in the process. And then the onboarding user itself, if we look at that, this is a listing of users, but it also, we've got an import form that handles the creation of the bringing in the user. So picking a file to upload, we create a list from that Excel pointing to that sheet one, and then for each item in that list, we create a new user. So we have an importing functionality, and yeah, so that exists. And then in our workflows, part of what I did in that other video is all these steps of workflows, each one handling a different concern. So let's talk about, I mean, some of this is a little bit simplistic. This first one, just users come in a new status, and all we do when this workflow runs is update them into the next status. So from status 1 to status 2. It's a pretty simplistic, but if there's something that you wanted to do as you were starting out with a new user, you could insert it into this workflow. The next thing that we do is a does user exist? And this is done by a couple of SQLs. And the point is that I really want to make is that this step can be done in bulk. We are checking the users against the user table, and a couple of SQLs gets us to the point where we know whether or not the user exists, but we don't have to do one-by-one processing. I think it's important to note that anything that you can do in bulk processing is going to work faster versus row by row processing. But one of the things that you can't do in bulk in this environment is to create the new users. So this has to be done at a one at a time activity. So we create a list of users, and then we loop through that user list. And what it does is we use the create user through the user registration action, and set up all the values, and then advance to the next one. And so this is a one-by-one kind of a process. All the logic for these was covered in the video yesterday, but just wanted to point out we have all these individual workflows present, ready to be used today to advance people through that. Some of them are bulk, some of them are one-by-ones. Okay. So the work that we're going to do focuses on that processing engine that has all that nice visuals to it and things like that. So we're going to create the content for that, and so that's going to be so we'll start with the entities that are involved, and I'm going to actually do that kind of in backwards order so we don't have to continue to create things. So I'm going to create a page. This is going to be, I'm just going to call it processing, new page, processing. It's only going to be visible to our developer users, and we'll let those same users be able to edit. But that's where we're going to put all of our entities. And the first entity I'm going to create is our process step status. This is going to be I'm going to create a new namespace called processing. We'll call it processing engine. We had a client point out that namespaces can only be created in certain places. Not everywhere that you can use a namespace can you create them. So you can definitely create them in entities and workflows. That's just one of the current quirks of our development efforts. So we have processing engine as a namespace, and the I'm going to create the process step status. In the plural of that, I'm going to call it the process step status values. And if I can spell. And I'm going to put that under our processing page. And we're going to do two things. We're going to add two properties. This is going to be the name of the status, and that'll just be a text field. And then we're going to add the color of the status, and that also will be a text field. We'll call the name our display name property. And I'm going to go ahead and fill in the process step status values so that we have them to work from. And so we'll do these one at a time here. We'll have the inactive status, and that the color I'm going to assign that is info. I'm going to be using some Bootstrap 5 stuff here in a minute, and you'll see how this comes into play. So the next one is going to be waiting status. So a step can be waiting. Success is kind of a green color, so we'll do that. When it's running, I'm going to go to a yellow color, which is called warning, and then the last one is complete, which I'm going to use the color name danger. It's actually a red, so this gives us that. But let's make that look nice here and show how we're going to make that happen. So we can add a visual of this by going into the listing. And I'm going to, doing this here in a new tab, I'm going to add a computed field called visual, just so that you can visualize it. This is an HTML that we're going to copy and paste here. And so I want to turn on allow HTML. We're doing a paragraph. We're using the class of badge with BG dash and then whatever color that I've got here, and then the name of it. So this is going to illustrate what it's going to look like. So a little snippet of HTML. I'll go ahead and drop this on the clipboard in case anybody's interested on the chat. And so we save that and take a look at it. So now when we refresh, we get these nice badges. So info translates into blue, green, yellow, red. So we get simple badges there. Just looks nice. Okay, so that's that we have statuses done. And we don't need that. And gotta keep my life simple here a little bit. So we'll close down some tabs and go back to our entities. The next entity I want to create is the steps itself, and these are going to, I'm doing it kind of again in backwards order because I'm going to be able to use the status that we just created in this. And so this is going to be called process step or process steps. And again, I'm going to put this under our processing menu. The properties that I want to have here, I'm going to have one that's called is enabled. This is going to be the thing that lets us turn on and off a particular step, and we'll make that a Boolean. The name of the step will be text, and that'll also be our display name. I'm going to add a rank so I can make sure the steps run in the order that I want, and I'm going to do that as a number, an integer. These are going to be linked to a workflow, so I'm going to add a property called workflow, and that's a GUID, and will just fit nicely inside of a text field. And then the last one is status. And this is we're going to use our process step status that we just created so we can link them that way. And that's it. We'll save that. And then the last one that we're going to do is the process itself. So all these steps are going to be grouped under a given process. So we'll say process or processes, and we're going to put that under our processing page. And these are going to have two properties. It's going to have the process overall will have a name, and you might be able to put in a description, but I'm not going to do that right now. And we'll say enabled and as which will be again a Boolean and steps. So this is where we link to a list of process steps. So this is going to let us link in any number of steps together with this process. The name is going to be our display property. Make that filterable, sortable. Sure, we can make enabled be whether or not it's filterable as well. And go from there. So now we have these three entities. We can create a process. We can create steps of the process. Each step can have a status. And so let's see what that looks like. So we could have let's say that we're going to create an onboarding process, and we're going to call this onboard version 1. You could create a part of the benefit of this kind of a way to think about things is to create different versions of the same thing with different steps, or you could have a version 2 that you quit using version 1 and enable version 2 as once you've tested it out, things like that. So we've got a new process. It doesn't have any steps yet, so we're going to start adding steps. We're probably going to have to make some changes to make this look nice, but we'll do that here. The first thing is if we start adding a step, when it gets to pointing to workflow, it doesn't give us the nice prompt for which workflow we have. That's because workflows are GUIDs and are referred to by their GUID, and we need to change this to work with that. So I am going to go to our steps form. And like I did last week, we will enhance this to include prompting this as a drop down. So we'll change it from a text box to a drop down. Drop down is going to get its source from SQL query. And the SQL query is this, which I will also put on the chat in case you want to know how to select out. But this gets the namespace name and the workflow name together as the text that you see. And then we get the global ID, the GUID of the workflow, as the value of it. And so that's what this query is doing. And that's the only change that we need to make here. So once we save this, that when we add, now workflow comes up with a workflow. And so now we can start adding our steps. So the steps is we'll process new users. Notice that our status is automatically populated with these indicators. We won't pick any, well, we'll pick inactive to start with just so that and this is enabled. We give it any name we want, and I'm just going to give it a 10 as a rank so it has something to look at. So now a couple of cleanup things that we can do. The workflow is showing up with a ID and the status is showing up with with just the words, and it'd be nice to see it as an indicator. So let's start cleaning that up a little bit. We've already covered how to do the first one using that. We can change the status over into something else. Notice that status name, status color is available, so we don't have to add them. They're just available there. So we're going to add a computed field, and it's going to be called status. And sorry, I got to catch up on my already done it system. So again, we're going to use this same syntax where we're going to use the status name, status color to show it as a badge. And we then don't need it as words anymore. So we can do that much. Take a look. I forgot to click that it needs to be allow HTML. So now we're getting our status badge. Another thing that would be convenient, I'm going to add a field, the last modified date, and that's just going to help us as we see things run. We can see when they ran. I'm just going to call it, we'll call it run date here, or change date. Let's do that. And format it as a date with some date format. So we get some choices here. And so we'll do it like that with converting to my current time. So we now have a date column. It hasn't been modified, so it doesn't have a change date, but we'll see that come up in a minute. So we're cleaning this up. The last thing we need is the workflow needs to display as a name instead of an ID. And so in our we've got some tokens that this is something that Bogdan, our CEO, created. And so I'm just going to copy and paste a little bit. We're going to create some workflow tokens. So let's grab those. So we go to tokens and import these. One of the tokens we get is GUID to name. So if we have a GUID here and use the GUID to name, we'll run the test and pop the GUID in there. It gives us the name of it, onboarding process new users. This, just in case you wanted to see it, it's a SQL query. It's a database query that gets the name out of the right table and uses the GUID to get to it. So there's the code if you needed that. So now we can use this format to display it in our listing. And we've got our listing here. So instead of showing the workflow field, again, we'll replace this with a computed field. We're going to call it workflow. And there's the format of it. And instead of a hard-coded GUID, we need to look at the value of the workflow. We'll put it up here. We don't need this one anymore. All right, so now we've got that all cleaned up. Let's do some more of these steps. We'll just blow through these. Again, each of these just represents a workflow that we're going to call at the appropriate time. Patrick, are you there?
I am.
But I want to just make sure I was doing something here. I heard my power supply click. Had a little glitch here for a second, but luckily it didn't. This is always my worry that I'm going to be working away and go offline in one of these discussions. All right, so these are all the statuses, excuse me, all the steps that we're going to go through. People are going to start out as new. They're going to do these one at a time. So we're going to build an engine that that runs people through these steps. Um, so let's start that. This is going to be in the form of a process steps workflow. And so it's just something that we can call and test out. And we're going to do this in phases so that you'll get to see it working. So we'll create a new workflow. It is going to be in the processing engine namespace, and it's going to be called steps. The input to this is going to be whatever process we want to run, the name of the overall stop process that has steps. So we will add that, and this is a entity of type process. And the first thing that we want to do is to get a list of all the steps that are connected to this process. I'm going to do that with a create list from SQL. I've developed this. We'll talk about it, how this SQL works. But we're going to create a list from SQL. And it's going to accept as a parameter one process ID. So we're going to get the process ID, and that's going to come from our input process. So the input process, if we put a one or point to the process one, that's going to be substituted into our SQL. Again, I'm going to look at that SQL in just a second, but what we're going to be creating is a list called step list. All right, so let's look at the SQL. We're getting information from, let's get this down where we can see it all. So we're getting data from the process table, process entity. We're joining through this, there's a join table that's created automatically when you do a list of type. And so the process steps, and we're joining on the IDs on the process ID equals the ID of the process, and then we're joining to the step. So there's and let's actually, I'm going to save all this and just take a look at this a little bit visually. If we turn on the SQL console, we can get a look at how what the SQL is doing and what tables are available to us. So I'm going to do the same query here in the query window and just say that I want it for number one. This will also verify that it works. So we're getting the name of the process, we're getting the name of the step, the step ID, the rank, the GUID, whether or not it's enabled. So again, just to kind of look at our entity structure, when you have a process that when you have an entity that links to another entity as a list of this intermediate table that has kind of a join of the name process step steps. It's a little bit odd naming structure, but it works. And then that's the thing that gets you to process step. And just for illumination, because we don't have much data, this will probably help make it make sense. You can see that process ID 1 is linked to these 6 steps that we did. So this, we can join through this from process to process ID, step ID to the step, and that gets us to that. So that's what this SQL in our process steps workflow is doing. So this gets us all of our steps. And now that I have all the steps in the step list, I am going to use it several times. This could be more efficient, I grant you, but it will illustrate, I think, nicely how we can use this. When you have a list, you can use execute actions for each list entry and tell it that you want to do the step list. Whoops. Loop through the step list. I've got a comment here. What we're doing is looping through the step list, and we're going to set all to an inactive status. So this looping is going to happen. So for every item that we get, we're going to partially update our step values. No, not the status values. That's the wrong one. Patrick, you're supposed to stop me when I do the wrong thing. Let's try again. Update our process step. The one we're going to do is the step list step ID. That comes from the SQL that we did. We're going to change the status property to something, and it's probably a 1. Let's take a look at our steps. Nope. Our status values. We want the status to be a 1 inactive. So that's what we're doing here. And say save. And let's just test this much to see that it works. In order to demonstrate that it works, I'm going to have to pick one of these and change its status to something else. So we'll just change it to running. And run this little bit of code. Choose our process. And now we take a look at it, and it has moved everything to inactive. So our first step, just changing everything to inactive, is working. I'm going to make one change in this listing, and this is kind of a cool one if you haven't seen it before. In our steps listing, I'm going to turn on an auto refresh. And this says that every 3 seconds that this is going to refresh. So as these status values are changing behind the scenes, this screen is just going to change, and so we'll be able to see it change without having to refresh. All right, so we've got our first step done. We've set everything to inactive. So here's one that we don't do very often. I'm just going to reuse that same list. And so I'm going to do another for each actions for each entry. We're going to go through the same step list because it's a new action. It's going to go through the same list, starting at the top and going on. And the thing that we're going to do is for every step that's enabled, we want to change the status to ready, or what is the status? Yeah, waiting. So we will add an action. This is again partially update the process step, and the condition is step is enabled. That's coming from our SQL again. And what we're updating then is the step list. Step E, and changing the status to 2. 2 is waiting. So this is only going to change the active ones. And so if we save and test this, they're all active. And so do something wrong, yes. I didn't run it yet. There it is. So now they all went to waiting. If we'd had one of these as false, then it would remain inactive. But so we start with setting all to inactive, and then let's make a better comment here. We're changing all to waiting that are all that are active. Right. So now we are. Now we're good. It's time to actually do the work. So one more time, we're going to do a for each, and we're going to run through the same step list, but this time we're actually going to do the work. Step list, and this is say loop through the step list and process each enabled step. To make it easy to do each enabled step, I'm going to use execute actions so that we can place a condition on this whole thing. And the condition is whether or not the step is enabled. So we'll say step is enabled, we're going to do these actions. And so the first action is that we're going to change our status from waiting to running. And running is status 3. So we'll do update the step. The step ID that we're doing is step list step ID. We're changing the status to 3. The next thing that we want to do is to run the workflow that's involved that is part of this step. So we will say execute workflow. This action lets us pick a workflow either by name, or if we use the expression choice, we can do it by ID. We can do step list workflow. Now this is again is a simplistic scenario because I'm not passing any inputs. I don't really care about any outputs. These steps are just going to run in order. But of course, this is where inputs and outputs is where it would get interesting. Because this will all happen so very fast, I'm going to use a wait just so we can see it at work rather than happening instantaneously. So I'm going to add a 3-second wait in the middle there. And then finally, we have this, we want to update it to complete. So I'm going to take this same where we change running. I'll clone this. And instead we'll change to complete. Save. So now let's go ahead and run this and take a look at what happens behind the scenes. Because we added that delay, we're seeing them automatically change complete. They started out as inactive, they went to waiting, running, complete. We're seeing them go one at a time. So the activity is happening. Well, we didn't put any data in here yet, so we can't see if it's actually using, but the steps are running. So let's solve that. Let's go put in some. Oh, no, we did put in data. I forgot we did import. So we see now that that everything in our process has happened. We've identified who is a user. So we have the hi John, and we've set up your account, and then the one for the manager, because the manager is true, they get this extra paragraph, this extra content that was part of that workflow that builds the email that says if they're a manager, we get extra content. So we're down to just having to send the email. That is largely what I wanted to present today. So if you have questions, it'd be a great time to formulate them. And Patrick, I know you've been following along. So if there's something that I didn't give attention to that or questions that you have, it'd be a great time to start it off.
Did you have the user data in here already? Is that where it came from?
Um, if I if I didn't, I wasn't sure. So let's clear it out and start again. So we can just go through it again to make sure. So we have users that got created here, and so I'm just going to delete all these out. So we'll just see the whole thing work from front to back, and we soft delete users. I'm going to hard delete the users so they're not in the system at all. And then we'll look at our onboarding user table, and we'll just clear that out as well. So we start with an empty, and so let's now take a look at that. If we go to users, we have no users. If we go to the onboarding users table, it's empty. We say import users, and we'll pick a file, which is that same Excel. Import. So we get them and it's empty. So now it's a question of running the processing. And this is actually a really good next thing. We have our processes, and I'm going to go into our process steps. This is what we want to run. I'm going to add a button here that's going to run them and use one of our new actions that'll be very nice for this. So we're going to add a root button that says run now. And let's see if we can find a icon that, yeah, we got an icon that says running. And so what the new action that we're going to do is the async. Execute actions asynchronously says that we can kick off something to work and then immediately come right back. So it's going to start working, but it's not going to hold us up. And so what we're going to run is the process execute process steps workflow that we just created. And the process that we want to do is up here on the query string. It's process ID. So we'll just get that off the query string. And then that's it. We'll just run that asynchronously and come right back. So we can save and pressure. Now we get a run button. So going back to where are we? If we look at our onboarding users, they're all in new status. We can click our Run Now button and things start to
Hmm.
happen on the screen, but we can go on and do other things. Again, we've got this weight in here that's slowing it down pretty substantially, but otherwise it would just go from green to red. You wouldn't even be able to see it. And so now if we look at this, we, it's it's done all the work of onboarding, and we're all in sitting in send welcome email status, so we could build out that next status. And then in our users, we have all our users got created. Everyone except Tom Manager got created with the users role, but Tom Manager got created with managers and users. So yeah, thanks. I don't think I had gone all the way through that, and at least now we've demonstrated from front to back that the
Yeah,
thing works.
great. And so the send email would then be you would create another process. Is that what you would do next?
Exactly, a
Yeah.
workflow that reads for everything that is in the send welcome email status. It would actually send the email. If it succeeded at sending the email, it would send change the status to onboarding complete. If an error happened, maybe we create a new status for um, email errors. Maybe there's a we could catch that kind of thing. But yes, that simply create a workflow, add another step to this process, and give it ID number 70, for example, rank 70 because we're processing these in order. Other enhancements we could do here would be to implement drag and drop, which we've done in the past, so that you could reorder these without having to manually pick a rank, drag them around. So that's something we could do maybe in a future episode. Last chance for any questions. We're coming to the top of our hour. All right, thanks for spending that hour with us. We will, of course, be doing Low-Code Cafe in 2 days, excuse me, Low-Code Campfire in 2 days, discussion format. So if anybody has any questions about this or you want to dive in on something particular, or could you, or how does this apply to you, we'd be happy to take that up in that event. So do sign up for that. Come and join us. Thank you for spending this hour with us, and we will see you again in 2 weeks.